Hello, you're watching DD News and I'm Preeti presenting Late Edition tonight. For the first time in over 6 decades, the Supreme Court has questioned how Muslims can continue to be called a minority in Jammu and Kashmir where they are in majority. The Supreme Court bench has rather asked the centre and the state government and the National Minorities Commission to explain why for decades there has never been a determination of who is a minority in Jammu and Kashmir, which also doesn't have a state minority commission. To talk more on this on Late Edition tonight, we have with us two guests. We are joined in by Mr. Sushil Pandit. He is a Kashmir expert. Also with us, we have Mr. Rajiv Vora. He's the president, Swaraj Peet, and he's also a Kashmir expert. Thank you so much, sir, both of you, for joining us on Late Edition tonight. Mr. Vora, first we will talk of what exactly constitutes a minority in a secular state.
In a secular state, nobody constitutes a minority. Minority and majority, these classifications, because all classifications incorporate norms.
Okay.
So what norms does it incorporate when state is a secular? It only incorporates the norm of equality of all citizens. No special privilege to any group, linguistic, religious, etc., etc. If India were a theocratic state, then it would have been very likely that the numerically majority community, Hindu, would have more privileges constitutionally than numerically weaker and lesser minorities. Then minority and majority classification would be legitimate. But once a state is secular, then in the eye of the state, in the matter of the state, how can citizens be divided among majority and minority? Everybody is a citizen of the state. Religion is my affair. Because neutrality is the pivot of the state relationship with all the communities, religious communities. The neutrality means that you cannot distinguish on the basis of religion in the matter of privileges and rights among all the citizens of the country.
All right.
So this is a fundamentally wrong idea and wrong practice. I don't know where this has come from. This should be fundamentally questioned and completely done away with.
All right,
nobody
Mr.
is a
Pandit.
minority, nobody is a majority. But yes, at a societal level,
Yes, societal level.
we have become communal somehow. And therefore, their discrimination, which was not there about 50 years back, there was less discrimination between Hindus and Muslims, met more lovingly than they are meeting today, right? So, I would say that on two axes, this issue should be discussed. One is the secular state and its norms. Second is the feeling of deprivation. Kashmiri Muslim may have the feeling of deprivation and therefore they may be asking for the privileges. But to ask for privileges in the name of being minority in Kashmir would be morally, factual and constitutionally wrong. So the other axis is that of the deprivation. So I would say that this distinction, Supreme Court and all those who are responsible for, say, resolving these issues, should think on these two axes, and both these axes then have sub-axis too. But that we can go later on that.
Mr. Pandit, you are a Kashmir expert. I would want you to explain to us what exactly is the Supreme Court looking at. He's put forth two axes, 2 points which have to be taken care of when we talk of minorities. Now, in our statistics, we've also shown what is the breakup of the population in Jammu and Kashmir. What is your take on that, and how would you take this thought forward?
Yeah, I tend to agree with Rajiv ji when he says that in a secular state, the concept of minority and majority on religious grounds is alien to reason. There is no logic because state doesn't discriminate across those lines. However, at the time of independence and framing our constitution, our forefathers decided to not only create minorities within India, but also specific provisions for these minorities, and it led to such perversion that some of the privileges meant for minorities were meant for minorities alone. Majority was deprived of those rights, such as running your own education institutions and running your own institutions for promotion of, say, language or culture or whatever else. But what has happened, in specific context of Jammu and Kashmir that you asked, the state has its own constitution. This constitution was promulgated in 1956, good 6 years after Indian constitution was promulgated. One thought that the state constitution would probably at least pick up all the progressive provisions from Indian constitution, or probably improve upon it, because they had chance. However, you would be astonished to know state of Jammu and Kashmir has a constitution which doesn't even have the word minority, and therefore this is the only state which doesn't even appoint a minority commission of its own.
That is what.
But it doesn't desist from taking the privileges enshrined in the Indian constitution meant for minorities.
But sir, there is this clause 7 of the Prime Minister's 15-point program, wherein it's talked of the welfare programs for minorities targeted for the 6 communities. Now, the clause also says where one of the above minority community is in majority, the earmarking of the financial and the physical targets would be done for the rest of the communities there.
It may have made an exception in case of one step, but the point is, the state of Jammu and Kashmir, where Muslims constitute majority, or for that matter some of the northeastern states where Christian constitute majority, they actually are availing all the benefits meant for minorities.
Yes.
99% plus population of Kashmir Valley today comprises of Muslims, but there the handful of 600 families left of Hindus constitute the majority. Such is the perversion prevailing. In fact, it is this perversion that must have led this young lawyer to petition the Supreme Court, because we are using these provisions in Constitution in a very perverse manner.
But then who is to decide, or who is to take a call on this? Is it a centre subject or a state subject for that matter?
I think this advocate has done a yeoman's job in order to draw the attention of Supreme Court to find out whether is it logical, is it legitimate to create a minority out of those who are 99% population of a valley, and where the actual minorities who've been rendered microscopic in proportion are bandied about as majority and are deprived of even basic protections and human rights. Now this is where the penny drops, and we need to address this issue. Plus the larger issue is, can you call a 200 million population in a country minority? Minority in letter and spirit are microscopic in number, are really small
that
groups.
That is the case of the other communities in the state of Jammu and Kashmir,
Internationally, minorities are those who are really small with respect to the overall universe of a state or a society. Not huge chunks which are into scores of millions. They are large communities. In fact, independently they constitute as big a population as of an independent nation itself. So considering these aspects, you cannot arbitrarily apply a mathematical formula for a minority. It needs to be looked at from all considerations, also with respect to what is the total number of majority, what is the total size of the universe, and within that, if someone constitutes 15, 16 or 20% population, can they actually demand to be called minority? This is the subject.
All right. We'll talk about it more, but at present we're heading for a short commercial break. You're watching Late Edition tonight. Stay with us. We're talking of the minority dilemma in Jammu and Kashmir. We'll be back after a short commercial break.
परिंदों के ये घोंसले हमें यकीन दिलाते हैं, सच है ये, तिनका जोड़कर ही आशियाने बनाए जाते हैं। कुछ ऐसे ही बनाया हमने भी अपने इस देश को। सड़कें, स्कूल, हॉस्पिटल, सरकार के हर निर्माण में एक तिनका हमने भी लगाया है, क्योंकि हमने सही समय पर आय कर चुकाया है। अगर किसी कारणवश आपने अभी तक अपना एडवांस टैक्स जमा नहीं कराया है, तो असेसमेंट ईयर 2017-18 के लिए अपना एडवांस टैक्स 31 मार्च 2017 तक जरूर जमा करें। और हाँ, अगर अभी तक अपना इनकम टैक्स रिटर्न फाइल नहीं किया है, तो असेसमेंट ईयर 2015-16 के लिए अपना इनकम टैक्स रिटर्न 31 मार्च 2017 तक अवश्य फाइल करें, ताकि आपका अपना देश, आपका आशियाना बेहतर से और बेहतर बने। आयकर विभाग द्वारा जनहित में जारी।
सुबह सुबह इतनी जल्दी मचा रखी है। हाँ बाय पापा। आप में से कौन कौन विदेश में हायर स्टडीज के लिए लोन लेना चाहता है?
मैडम, इंटरेस्ट कितना होगा?
जो भी अल्पसंख्यक स्टूडेंट विदेश में पोस्ट ग्रेजुएट डिप्लोमा, मास्टर्स, एमफिल, पीएचडी जैसी हायर स्टडीज के लिए लोन लेना चाहता है, उसके इंटरेस्ट पर सरकार सब्सिडी दे रही है। यानी आपके एजुकेशन लोन का इंटरेस्ट अब सरकार चुकाएगी।
मदद हमारी, मंजिल आपकी।
जैसे सूट टाइप, यू नो, मुझे ये ग्रीन या फिर ब्राउन। ठीक है, आप ये पैक कर दीजिए। कितने का दिया? बच्चे को संतरा ही पसंद है, यही दे दीजिए। अगर आप माँ बनने वाली हैं, तो HIV टेस्ट जरूर करवाएं। बच्चे को HIV से बचाने के लिए जल्द ही पता लगाना और वक्त पे दवाई दिलवाना जरूरी है।
करें वही जो बच्चे के लिए हो सके।
हर सरकारी अस्पताल के ICTC में HIV की जांच एवं सलाह मुफ्त और गोपनीय है।
मैं ये नहीं पूछूंगा कि आप शौच के लिए कहाँ गए। मैं ये भी नहीं पूछूंगा कि अगर आप खुले में शौच के लिए गए तो क्या आपने अपने बच्चे की जान को खतरे में डाला? क्या आपके गांव की बच्चियों को खुले में शौच करते हुए किसी ने बुरी नजर से देखा? आप खुद समझदार हैं, सक्षम हैं। आप ये तो जानते ही होंगे कि हमारे देश में 70,000 से ज्यादा गांवों के लोगों ने खुले में शौच की प्रथा को खत्म कर दिया है। गांव के बच्चे, महिला, पुरुष सब इस लक्ष्य में जुटे। निगरानी समितियां बनी जिन्होंने खुले में शौच कर रहे लोगों को समझाया, शौचालय बनाया, उनका इस्तेमाल करना सिखाया। क्या आपका गांव भी बनेगा खुले में शौच से मुक्त? आइए स्वच्छ भारत अभियान से जुड़िए। अब नहीं तो कब?
Hello, welcome back after the break. You're watching Late Edition. In Late Edition today, we're discussing Jammu and Kashmir, the minority dilemma. We have with us two guests in our studio. We're joined in by Mr. Rajiv Vora and Mr. Sushil Pandit. So we were talking, before heading for the break, we were talking of who constitute a minority in a secular state. But then when the centre announces the welfare schemes, it is the responsibility of the state to ensure that the welfare schemes are channelized well into the state itself. The plea has hit upon that itself. It says the welfare schemes which have been announced by the centre are not reaching the people, the minorities, the minority communities there, the Sikhs, the Hindus, the Buddhists there. What is your take on that?
This obviously is a fact that a lot which is meant for minorities is not reaching them. It is not alone because the provisions are faulty or the system is faulty. It's also because those who are administering the system are not following the law in the true and honest spirit. For example, the state of Jammu and Kashmir knows that it has minorities within its fold. And it also knows that constitution mandates certain provisions for minorities. But it looks the other way when it comes to defining those minorities. It conveniently picks up the provisions of Indian Constitution and says that according to Indian Constitution, the minorities are A, B, C, D and E, and therefore what is the majority in the valley qualifies to be the minority, and it is happily diverting it there. So this is perverse. In fact, they have expelled the micro minorities within their society over the last 27, 28 years and usurped what was meant for minorities like them for a majority.
Right.
There. Now, it is for the courts now, it is for the policy establishment to decide whether this should be allowed to continue. Likewise, while every state and at the national level there is a minorities commission, the state refuses to, has been dragging its feet on constituting a minorities commission, lest the genuinely harassed minorities go to the minority commission and ask them, what have you done about us? So there is a huge lacuna in our system of dispensing justice for minorities and truly interpreting the constitutional provisions as envisaged by our forefathers while putting together the Constitution. Today, it is a crying need to address this entire issue, and what is in front of the Supreme Court as a matter is therefore very timely and extremely important.
Also explain to us what are the international norms when we talk of this concept of minorities, as you're talking of how the definition changes in different circumstances. What are the international norms if we...
As Rajiv ji was pointing out, international norms are where the state professes a certain adherence and those who are beyond that adherence, say in terms of religion or ethnicity, then the rest constitute the minority. But in our case, we are secular. So state doesn't adhere to or doesn't proclaim itself to be of one denomination or the other. That's number one. Number two, minorities in such societies or countries, even when the state adheres, are of really small, minuscule number. In percentage, it wouldn't perhaps go beyond 1 or 2%. In our case, large numbers in 15, 16 or 18% or even 2 to 3% constitute minorities even when they are in tens of millions. And they live in concentration. They share political power. They have huge institutional mechanisms. They are strong groups. In fact, there are groups constituted as majority numerically who need protection from such minorities in such cases. And today, demand for reservations and privileges is also taking a very perverse turn, where socially powerful groups, politically powerful groups are seeking a pie in reservation. Because once you allow perversion in constitutional terms, in policy terms, then it becomes a free-for-all and everybody seeks a pound of flesh.
Right. All right, up next again we're heading for a short commercial break. You're watching Late Edition tonight. We're talking of the minority dilemma in Jammu and Kashmir. Stay with us.
छह साल इसके आधार का तो बायोमेट्रिक अपडेट करवाना पड़ेगा।
अपडेट?
बच्चे जब 5 साल के हो जाते हैं तो उनका बायोमेट्रिक जैसे उंगलियों के निशान, आंखों का स्कैन और फोटो अपडेट हुए बिना आधार अमान्य हो जाता है। ये बिल्कुल निःशुल्क है। बायोमेट्रिक अपडेट आधार केंद्र पर होता है, जिसकी जानकारी 1947 पर कॉल करके या uidai.gov.in पर जाकर मिल सकती है।
मेरा आधार, मेरी पहचान।
गुड़गुड़म बुड़बुड़म बुलबुलों का जादू हम आ ई देखे देखे लेट्स अब बड़ा आ बोलो जल्दी से मुंह खोलो।
देखा?
अरे ये क्या कर रहे हो?
डॉक्टर मुन्नी सही तो है, हमारा मुंह है हमारी सेहत का आईना। मुंह को स्वस्थ रखने से दांत और मसूड़ों के साथ पूरा शरीर स्वस्थ रहता है। मुंह का स्वास्थ्य बनाए रखने के लिए दिन में 2 बार ब्रश करें और खाने के बाद कुल्ला, क्योंकि स्वस्थ मुंह है सेहत का आधार। समझे?
परिंदों के ये घोंसले हमें यकीन दिलाते हैं, सच है ये, तिनका तिनका जोड़कर ही आशियाने बनाए जाते हैं। कुछ ऐसे ही बनाया हमने भी अपने इस देश को। सड़कें, स्कूल, हॉस्पिटल, सरकार के हर निर्माण में एक तिनका हमने भी लगाया है, क्योंकि हमने सही समय पर आय कर चुकाया है। अगर किसी कारणवश आपने अभी तक अपना एडवांस टैक्स जमा नहीं कराया है, तो असेसमेंट ईयर 2017-18 के लिए अपना एडवांस टैक्स 31 मार्च 2017 तक जरूर जमा करें। और हाँ, अगर अभी तक अपना इनकम टैक्स रिटर्न फाइल नहीं किया है, तो असेसमेंट ईयर 2015-16 के लिए अपना इनकम टैक्स रिटर्न 31 मार्च 2017 तक अवश्य फाइल करें, ताकि आपका अपना देश, आपका आशियाना बेहतर से और बेहतर बने। आयकर विभाग द्वारा जनहित में जारी।
6 साल, इसके आधार का तो बायोमेट्रिक अपडेट करवाना पड़ेगा।
अपडेट?
बच्चे जब 5 साल के हो जाते हैं तो उनका बायोमेट्रिक, जैसे उंगलियों के निशान, आंखों का स्कैन और फोटो अपडेट हुए बिना आधार अमान्य हो जाता है। ये बिल्कुल निःशुल्क है। बायोमेट्रिक अपडेट आधार केंद्र पर होता है, जिसकी जानकारी 1947 पर कॉल करके या uidai.gov.in पर जाकर मिल सकती है।
मेरा आधार, मेरी पहचान।
Welcome back after the break. You're watching Late Edition, and today in Late Edition we're talking of the minority question in Jammu and Kashmir. We're joined in by 2 guests in our studio. So we're talking of the two points which you put forth in deciding who constitute for a minority. If the plea is accepted, if the case is taken forward from here, how far will it change the scenario? Because it will set an example for other states as well, where minorities are in majority, say Punjab, Arunachal Pradesh, Meghalaya. Your take on that? How far will it have,
It depends on how minorities are defined. Because minoritism, basically we equate it with a sense of deprivation, right? Minoritism is not translated in terms of superior power, but only inferior power, right? So now, those who have that sense of being inferior than the rest, there I think one thing which this petition's consequence should incorporate is a definition of minoritism. And that definition, as I said, should have this at least 2 axes. One, that what is the definition if it is a secular state? Then whether you will define a minority in terms of religion and faith, or in terms of ethnicity, language, economic status, etc., etc., sense of deprivation, the other axis, right? Now, if you work on the other axis, that is the sense of deprivation, no one would say that I am deprived because I am Hindu, or I am deprived because I am a Muslim. I don't think that is the sense in general population. But yes, in Kashmir if you go, then Bakarwal would say that yes, I am a Bakarwal, and that identity gives me a sense of deprivation, because Bakarwal are deprived, Gujars are deprived, Pahadis are deprived, they are exploited. Right? So therefore, on this other axis, should this commission be established as a result of the Supreme Court's order, intervention, then this commission should at least redefine this whole terms of reference. Its mandate should be very clear, and it should make once and for all clear that minoritism, majoritism in terms of religion should not be applied for deciding privileges. However, having said that, I would say that there is a minority commission in the center, right?
Yes.
Because certain religions, certain faiths may be having a feeling that we are not equally represented in the matter of the state power. Because secularism means neutrality and the equality with all, right? So that is a different area altogether, which doesn't apply, I think, so much in Kashmir.
Not at all.
Not at all, right? But the ethnicity, economic deprivation deprivation in terms of one's participation in the structures of power, political power.
Yes.
All these are the various dimensions of the axis of sense of deprivation, and it has a larger implication and consequences for the other regions like Northeast,
right,
etc., etc.
Right, Mr. Pandit, your closing comments. The parameters have to be underlined and have to be drawn clearly to take forward the idea of minorities, to divide and
Absolutely.
select the sections.
The spirit in which it was determined then were for really small groups like Anglo-Indians when British were leaving India, like Parsis. Now these are real microscopic groups, and they do not have access to large systemic institutional advantages or protections. So in parliament, in assemblies, wherever they are in certain numbers, were given a nominated status so that they had a voice. Likewise, as was just now mentioned by Rajiv ji, marginal subaltern groups in different states, Gujars and Bakarwals in Kashmir, or for that matter Bhotias, in Trans-Himalayan regions. Now they are, because of historical reasons, are in the margins, and we've already identified a lot of tribes within India and in certain regions where they are deprived because of educational and economic backwardness or loss of social integration and so on and so forth. Now that was the spirit of this provision, not massive large numbers who are counted in crores, who form a huge proportion within the state's population, who wield disproportionate political power compared to their number very often, who are quoted in electoral battles because they make the candidates win or lose. Now such groups to be designated as minorities and be given extra privileges is actually striking at the very roots of a just and fair society and will have its implications.
All right, so the parameters have to be drawn clearly, and added to that, the execution of the schemes put forth by the centre for the welfare of the communities at the state level have to be taken care of to ensure welfare of all sections of the society. Thank you so much, sir, both of you, for joining us on Late Edition tonight. So that was the gist of Late Edition, Jammu and Kashmir, the minority dilemma was what we were talking about. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.
Thank you.